So thank you for joining us. It is now 12:15, so we will get started with today's webinar. This is the April installment of the 2020 webinar series for Business Process Intelligence, and we're very pleased that you're able to join us. I know right now is often very busy with meetings and different what other webinars going on, so we definitely appreciate you taking this time out to spend your lunch hour with us. So today, as you can see, we will be discussing office design and layout. This webinar is being recorded, and we thank you as well for staying on mute, just so that we don't have any background noise coming in while Jeff is presenting. However, do feel free to use the chat window if you have any questions, and there will be a time for Q&A following the webinar. For those of you that aren't as familiar with EZSigma, we just wanted to put our vision and mission up here just for you. We are very passionate about continuous improvement and working with organizations to help them achieve their goals. Jeff Woods is one of our facilitators that's been working with us for many years. He's got experience in all different industries and brings a wealth of knowledge and information to the table. So I have no doubt that you will enjoy listening to him today. And for those of you that have already had the pleasure of being in a program with him or working with him through your project, I'm sure that you'll agree with my assessment that Jeff is excellent. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Jeff.
Fantastic. Thank you, Liz. Jeff Woods here. And so this is sort of an interesting, and we tried to make it topical topic for this webinar, looking at office space and our kind of how we're set up. And really we want to bring it into what's going on today and talk about how your home office is set up, what you're doing right now, and how that's working for you. So kind of overall, kind of broader things around, how does office setup improve productivity, reduce wasted time? What's the best way to set it up? What elements do I need to be thinking about? How do I improve the design? What are some sort of good ideas or suggestions? That'll sort of take us through some of the ideas of it, and then we want to reflect a little bit on our own health from a design of how we're situated in our offices and kind of where we're at from an opportunity to be looking at ourselves and our processes and continuous improvement. So why is it important? Sort of in a holistic sense, a good layout really helps our motivation to work. I mean, if we're well focused, and again, thinking more so in the office design world, helps with productivity, kind of how are we situated around who do I work with, who am I in communication with, are we close to each other? I'll use that in parentheses right now because we're all separated and purposely separated. But what's the impact on our productivity, on the culture of the business? So how is your office or facility, wherever you work, how is it designed, and kind of how does that reflect the culture of the organization and how the organization sees itself and sort of sets itself up for its workforce to be in a situation they can do what they need to do to get the job done. And how does that flow into our own sort of satisfaction in the job? Kind of looking at closer around the amount of clutter and stuff that we have. We'll talk a little bit about 5S and thinking about how we set ourselves up. How does kind of our office design, again, thinking more of the physical office versus our home office, help around recruitment? Is it a good place to work? Is it well designed? Is it thoughtful? Again, if you're looking at kind of the flow and how the business is set up, how does that reflect the culture and how it works? And obviously around technology requirements and how we're set up. We do spend a lot of time at work, whether it's regardless of what that job is, and so we want to make sure that it's set up to be as effective as possible. Lots of different types of layouts around how we can be designed, how we can have our flow design. So there's our individual workstation, and then again in at the office environment or in our building facility environment, how does where we're set up match the flow of whether it's a product, whether it's a document, whether it's information, whether it's a patient, whatever it is that's flowing through our organization, are we set up for that to be as efficient and effective as possible? And so lots of different things of ways that you can look at it. If we think about, where we are today, kind of want to tie it back to, your office and your home office, because that's where a lot of us are right now. And so, how are we set up? As we look at it, a lot of different organizations, there's a fair amount of flexibility that's going on right now as far as becoming more outcome focused versus just presenteeism. And it's interesting because, some organizations are, just flawlessly flowing from, well, instead of being in the office, I'm at home, but the work and the flow and the structure isn't changing a lot. There's other businesses that are going, well, how can I do this? Because if I can't see the people, how do I know they're working or what they're doing? And that comes back to sort of structure. Do we measure by outcomes? What metrics do we use to understand whether we're getting the work done? Or is it purely presenteeism? Well, if they're in at that desk all day, I guess that's a good thing. So allows us to sort of reflect on how that works. And again, within our own office right now, and again, being topical, when can I work? What technology requirements are there around being set up? Again, some organizations had to go out and buy massive amounts of technology or work through how do you don't have Wi-Fi, how are you setting that up, which then kind of flows over into business policy and, and how various teams connect. You can look at it from, there's certain times of day. Obviously, some people have other constraints right now when they're trying to work from home, whether that's, not necessarily constraint, but if you have children or other things or trying to match two different people working and sharing space, et cetera, how do all those things work into how you make it work, which isn't dissimilar from the conversations that go on in our actual businesses, where we're thinking about, well, how do we manage, whether we have one shift or multiple shifts, how do we set ourselves up for the flow and design of how things work, to maximize communication. But if we're setting up at home, what's the location? Where do I sit? What are the physical requirements that I need around standing, sitting? Kind of how do I make this work for me? What's the lighting like, space like, the noise? How do you set it up that you've got the focus, whether that's noise just from the ability to think about what you need to get done, or whether it's, you're being noisy and how that affects others around you. So all these different things that we need to be thinking about when we're setting up at home right now. And some people had an office already in the home, they just kind of moved into it. Others are going, wow, where am I going to work? Is it the kitchen table, etc. But if we think about it from how we talk about it, we can just say, yeah, some might say, well, how's it working for you? And you might say, it's okay, or it's not great, or whatever. Just like when we look at business process and we say, how's the process working? Well, it's okay. It could be better, but it's all right. What we want to do is we want to sort of step back and look through the lean lens or continuous improvement lens and think about it more, how can I change that more into a quantification? So let's look at it. So this page, which is a template, which you can then modify, but it gets you to think about, well, why do I think it's working or not working at home? So you go through the various elements that allow you to focus in on what parts of how I'm set up work really well and what parts don't work that well, so that I know where to focus to make it better. And that's not dissimilar from how we look at our processes at work. So again, all this, how we look and do everything, you can always look through, again, the the lens of Lean or the lens of continuous improvement, Six Sigma, etc. So in this case, we're looking at my activities are completed in a timely manner. How's that working based on my office setup? Technology is easily accessible. I can access the space when I need to. It's in the right location in my home. Where are you set up? Some people are in their basement. Some people, again, have an office. Some are in their bedroom. I've been on calls where people are kind of, looks like they're set up in a washroom because they're looking for that. They need to get away from everything else where it's quiet. And so are you actually not in one physical space in your home right now, but moving around depending on time of day, depending on type of engagement? I can sit in the dining room if I'm working on something, but if I have to take a call, then I need to go to the bedroom. So how does that all impact how you're set up right now? Do I have the right lighting, the amount of space I need? What's the noise level like? So these are all questions that you can be asking yourself, and it's a great way of kind of gauging, again, what's working, what's not working, so that if you're going to spend some time trying to make it better, you know where to focus that attention. And that same kind of concept is how we look at continuous improvement and everything around us. So I just want you to sort of pause for a moment, and I expect that most of you are in your homes right now. Some of you may be in your office, but chances are you're in your home. And just think about, how would you be answering these questions? And what's your setup like? And we'll sort of talk a little bit later around other things, but just sort of want you to give this some thought for a moment. Because from that, you can start to think, well, what could I do differently? How could I set this up a little bit differently at home to make it work a bit better? Because chances are I'm going to be here beyond this week. And so how's that going to work? And it's interesting because day one, when you came home the first day and you were setting up and we're in a rush, I got to get things going. And you may have just plunked things down in a certain place in the home, and that's just become the place you go. So not a whole lot of thought could have gone into it. It might have been the convenient place at the time. It could have been what worked at the time. And that's not unlike kind of how things work at work sometimes. So if that was how we did it day one, but does it still make sense in the current situation? So you might want to think about, wow, maybe I should look at other rooms, other areas, and we'll work through some of the sort of lean thinking tools to help us sort of think about or evaluate and visualize and quantify what works and what doesn't work. I'm just going to pause for a moment and see if anybody has any questions before I go on to the next slide. You don't have to say no questions. I'll just take silence as being good to go, but just give you an opportunity if you want to say anything. Okay, so again, before I leave this slide, I don't know when you set up whether you went into a pre-assigned office in your home. You may already have an office in your home, or you had to set something up, but have you stepped back to think about, am I set up correctly, or could it be better? This slide talks a little bit about looking through those 8 lenses, or the 8 wastes of how we look at processes. And you may want to look at your own office layout. And often the things that really kind of jump out, although all of them have impact, is around motion. So is there excess motion is going on the way I have things set up right now? Where I have access to my printer versus where my computer is. Do I have a printer? What do I need to do when I need to print to print off something, or access to any other kind of filing or whatever you're doing. So lots of excess potential motion. Inventory, where we're holding excess inventory of things, or need things, or running out to get things. How are we set up and working through? So it's kind of interesting to work through those 8 lenses, not only in how our office is set up, but actually in how that home office is engaging. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but how that home office is engaging with the processes that we're trying to do, the work we're trying to do, and how we interact with those in our work. Another tool is the spaghetti diagram, great way of visualizing what's going on. So if you were to think about where you're working, how you're set up, and how you access things, you could use a spaghetti diagram to see, well, you know, is this the best way that I could be organizing myself? You know, do I have the things that I use a lot really close, the things I use less often further away? Or, you know, what is the office, even if you moved into your pre-existing office, was it designed for a different purpose than what you're actually using it for right now? And so that it's really not that effective in how it's set up. Or, you know, conversely, are things too accessible? It's like, wow, I'm only 5 feet from the potato chip, you know, drawer. That's not a good thing, because I'm finding I'm going there a lot and don't even realize it. So, you know, kind of are some things that we don't want to be grabbing every 20 minutes, you know, too close, and we need to sort of kind of re-look at kind of how we sort of flow around our space. So spaghetti diagrams are always great for looking at office design or flow and how we're using things, and it's a good visualization and a good visualization to kind of really make us more aware of whether we should look at changing how we're set up. And again, we're looking through today a little bit through that lens of the home office, but you can certainly reflect back to your office in your actual facility or business where you work. And this is actually a really nice time, because before, when you're in it every day, you're kind of just heads down, oh, this is the way it is. Well, we're going to be going back to work at some point. And when we go back, we're going to be looking through a little bit of a different viewpoint. And there's a couple different reasons for that, and we'll talk about some of those later. But the first one is just because we haven't been there in a while. So all of a sudden, you can start to question, well, why am I using the drawers or my office or my filing cabinets or my space? Why am I using it the way I'm using it? You know, is there a better way that I could organize things? Actually, it worked better at home when I had certain things in certain places to make it easier to get the work done. Can I apply that back to my workspace when I get back to work? So what I'm really trying to talk about here are using some of those lean tools like spaghetti flow diagrams to really help us think about and visualize how we're set up. Just some other examples, so you can use the before and after. Again, miniature project, you know, can I redesign how I'm working at home, or take some of that thinking and when we go back to work, rethink our workflow and how we're set up in our offices currently. And I think we're going to see some changes to our offices anyway. Again, I think that's be an interesting conversation to have, because we'll talk about it, but certainly the genie's out of the bottle around some work from home, and how's that going to impact how the business is looking at their workspaces. And also with, you know, there's some new views around social distancing, around the sizing, et cetera, of workspaces. So I think there's going to be some interesting conversations that are coming out of the fact that we've been going through this unfortunate time right now. Again, just another idea around rethinking and reimagining the office layout and office design. You know, how does this work at home? This could be your house, or you're moving to different parts of it to get things. Maybe you're working in the dining room, but your printer's in the basement. And so every time you print something, you've got to go across, downstairs, get something, bring it back up, or however you're set up. Just ways of sort of thinking about it and wondering how that's impacting your day. So another great way we can look at it, if we think about it, is the 5Sing or 6Sing our office, right? So let's think about how we're set up. Again, let's use the home example, and then look at running a 5S and organizing ourselves appropriately. What do we need to have near us? What don't we need to have? You know, doing that sort of clear out and clean out. I know myself, we have an office in the home, which I use from time to time. Right now, though, there's myself and my wife at home, both working from the home, and I'm looking at the office through a new set of lenses, kind of looking at drawers some of our drawers that were just full of junk that's filled up over the years. You know, I've got probably not only old Blackberries and old phones, but all the old chargers and wires and headphones, all this stuff that's just been, oh, well, you don't need it right now, so I'll just throw it in the drawer, close the drawer, forget about it. You know, something else, throw it in the drawer, close the drawer, forget about it. And now you're sitting there going, well, where am I going to put stuff? You open up that drawer and it's full. Doesn't need you need more space. You need to sort of 5S the environment. So sort, set in order, shine, standardize, sustain. And again, from a 6S perspective, that whole safety, you know, what are we, and really applying right now, are we sort of setting ourselves up safely, or are we throwing things up on a shelf that maybe is heavy, that could teeter and fall off and potentially cause an injury or damage? So lots of different ways that we can look at it. Again, think of that 5S or 6S method of sorting out what's needed from what isn't needed and get rid of what isn't needed. Probably 80% of what's sadly in our office right now doesn't need to be there and just needs to have that attention. And that's the same thing that goes on at work. And what's going to be really interesting is when you go back to your office or workstation or whatever you were using before, you're going to look at it a little bit differently because you haven't been there in a while and you got used to working a little bit differently. And some of the things you'll go back to, you go, oh, finally, this is so much better than it was at home for this piece. And the other parts you might start to go, hey, wait a minute, why do I have all these things in here? You know, why do I open up that drawer and there's 147 pens? There's, you know, 7 staplers. There's, you know, another drawer has, you know, 6 different manuals that have been replacing other manuals or work instructions where the new things come in and the old things don't get thrown out. So starting to look through and go through sort, set in order. So let's organize what we do need. Let's shine, let's clean and inspect the area. Let's standardize how we're going to approach it so it stays that way. And then make sure we sustain it by, you know, those validations, those checklists to make sure that things are set up the way we want them to be, in the way they should be. And what you're going to find is that the work just gets a bit easier. You know what, it's faster because I know where things are and not having to stop, wait, go and look for something. You know, you want to apply some of the same thinking around safety stock and Kanbans when you're in your home office now. So for example, you don't want to go to print something and realize, oh, we're out of paper. Now I've got to, and today reality is that getting new things is a little bit harder. So if I need paper, it's not like I can just jump in the car, go to Staples, be back in 10 minutes. Now it's a matter of I need to order it online, wait for them to fulfill my order, to get back to me to say that it's okay so that I can go and pick it up. And so there's lots of different things that can really impact your productivity that you want to make sure you're set up for. So do you have safety stock in paper? Do you have extra ink if you're printing things off? Do you have whatever backup things you need? So all of those pieces that make your workstation work efficiently and effectively. So just some examples of office space design, you know, if you're in your home, how you could have it set up, how it could work. And a couple different things I want to talk about sort of just as we get through this course. One is office ergonomically, how it's set up. And because one thing that's really interesting, and I noticed it, is that you may have set up and you're again working from a kitchen table or a dining room table, but that's not working well because you don't have things at the right height. So all of a sudden, ooh, your back's a little bit sore, your neck's sore, or your wrists are sore, or you're just not set up appropriately. And if we're not careful, we're going to have a whole lot of people that need extra care. And it's not like you can go to the chiropractor or physio right now because you can't really get into those. So you need to think about, well, how can I make sure that I'm set up appropriately? And then we'll talk a little bit about building some standard work into it. But it's interesting. So as we look at it, there was an article in the Globe and Mail about a week ago, and I'm just bringing it up here. And so it's called the Ironing Board Desk and Other Work from Home Hacks, so that you're ergonomically set up. And it's interesting. It's a great read. And so we've got the link in here if you want to go and look at it. But thinking about how am I organizing myself? Because what you don't want to do is find out that, oh, I'm actually wake up in the morning and in a lot of pain. Now I can't actually go down and get some work done because I'm really stiff today. And so how can I set myself up for success? And of course, they use the ironing board desk, which was a really interesting thought in the article because, of course, the ironing board is adjustable. So you can have everything from if you need it for a while to be stand up, you can have it all the way up and work on it, or you can put it down to whatever height that matches your chair so that you've got that right proper angling of your arms to your computer keyboard or however that's working. And it's interesting because some of you may have had people come around and check your desk to make sure that it's working best for you at work. And you want to be doing that the same when you're working from home, because again, it's now been a number of weeks and it's going to be a number of more weeks or months, depending on how we look at it or your particular role before things become normal or whatever that new normal is. And the flip side of that is, one of the things that a lot of people have noticed is that, the home office, convenient as in you can be at work in 30 seconds, but that's also changed one's habits that potentially before there was the normal walking to the train, walking into the office, walking across town, going up and down staircases or meeting room to meeting room. So there could have been a X amount of normal exercise that was built into your day before that you're not getting now. And one of the things that I recommend, if we think about it through standard work, the whole idea of standard work is what are those components that I need to make sure of how I spend my day and making sure that I'm allocating time to different aspects of my day. And so you could build into standard work looking through that lens of building in stretching and exercise into your standard work for either daily or weekly, whatever, so that you build it in and plan it to say, okay, oh, it's 10 o'clock, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to do laps around the main floor of the house, or do some stretching, or whatever that looks like for you. But really important that you do that. So standard work, not only for standardization of how we do things and making sure that we set ourselves up for time that we need to do things. So often from a leadership standard work, if we don't build in the understanding of the time that certain things take up, whether that's walking the floor to see how employees are doing or going to huddles or the different things, the different ways that I spend my day, then what we tend to do is we tend to sort of, in the back of our mind, incorrectly think of our tack time of how much time I need to get things done, which is why often we're running behind. So we're not properly setting ourselves up in the standard work package of understanding what we need to do on a daily basis. And again, what I want to reflect that back here is when you're working from home, make sure that you're setting into your standard work package time for stretching and exercise. And that's going to make us all more efficient and effective and healthier going forward. I'm going to pause for a moment before I go on to one more topic that I'd like to talk about today. So the other is, it's interesting because we all of a sudden are working from home, which is changing how our work processes work. So this is really an excellent opportunity to look at process flow. You know, we just went through a rapid change in office locations. People are now working from home, and often we had to make tweaks to how we did things at work. Because maybe it was paper before and now we're going electronic. There's all kinds of different things that have happened that are impacting our process flows. So it's an excellent time to either review or create, if we don't have it, the current state process flow or value stream map of how we do things, and start to really put it through a critical eye. And again, there's that burning platform of change. So this is just an absolutely fantastic time to sort of open up and have those conversations around, you know, what do we need to do? What should we be doing? When this is over, should we be going back to the old ways, or have we realized that there's, you know, non-value added different things within that? So right now there's been rapid changes to electronic document flow. You know, what's going on, how has it changed the document flow, or whether it's whatever you're doing, how it goes from person to person, you know, timelines around reviewing, timelines around sign off and processes. I know that talking to some clients where they were able to move some documents online, which meant that instantaneously things were able to move from one person to another, even though they were in different locations, and it actually was speeding up the process, and it was propelling them in a direction they wanted to go anyway. And so they've actually been able to do more change faster, because that change management is a little bit different right now, because people are more open to looking and doing things differently. And at the same time, things that they couldn't move electronically or hadn't moved yet now needed to be manual, and they literally had to physically send a document from one person's house that needs to get couriered to another person's house so they can open it up, look at it, sign it, authorize it, send it back out by courier to go to the next house. And so things were now, instead of taking a day, are taking 2 weeks to do, versus the things they're doing electronically, instead of being a day, or now an hour. So there's, I'm sure all of you in some way are seeing lots of tweaks and changes to how you're doing things, why you're doing it. And this is just a fantastic time to really step back and question and look at that. You know, if we think about what's going on, employees have been great at doing what needs to be done to keep things moving. There's been, you know, lots and lots of people are just stepping up and doing the work, which has been fantastic. And at the same time, to support that, employers have been great at setting up the ability to work from home. So sometimes we had a lot of push and pull from either of those sides around the ability to work from home. It's like, no, you can't do that. That'll never work. Well, reality is we are. And, you know, within your own business, you know, the genie's out of the bottle. And so there's going to be a lot of thinking around, well, you know, do I need to be in the office every day? Or can we have portions of people working from home sometimes and in the office other times? You know, how can we make that work better? You know, and realizing that that has a potential positive impact on work-life balance. Maybe we can make things work better. It changes the stressing around office space, and obviously it takes some stress off of commuting times and commuting challenges that are going on right now. So all kinds of conversations, I think, are going to come up and are on the table, and this is the time to have them, because this is a time of rapid change. So it's going to be really interesting. And the other thing on the flip side of that I've noticed and talked to a number of people about are the size of an office space is changing. And so one large client, they just had gone through an exercise of setting up hoteling because they were having a lot of people that were not always working in the office, but sometimes working at home. And so they had set up hoteling so that when you are coming in, you don't have a specific space for you. You get a temporary space for that day. But what they're doing is they're reviewing, even though they just set it up in the last 8 months, they're now reviewing and looking at, they're going to take out every third one of those. And so they're going to open up the space to make them bigger and have more distance between people so that it has a different feel, and from a social distancing, then it makes more sense. So I think there's going to be a lot of conversations and a lot of change going on, and this is a great time for continuous improvement and a great time to be looking at your processes. When you're looking at them now, you can say, well, what have we learned about what's value add, what's non-value add, and what's business value add around those old process flows that we had? And what will that new normal look like from our businesses and processes to support it as we move forward? So it's going to be really interesting. And I think that it's a great time for continuous improvement conversations. And if anyone has any questions about how that works or what they could be initiating within their own organization to get those conversations going, would love to talk about it and get some of your thoughts around what you are doing or what you'd like to do or could do, and sort of have that dialogue. So summarizing, kind of coming out of the session today, we've spent a fair amount of time talking about it. Again, office space, but we can start to look through a whole lot of those lean tools, whether it's 5S'ing or 6S'ing or space, spaghetti diagrams to really understand the flow and motion and movement, looking at the 8 wastes and the 8 lenses of the different ways around productivity and process flow, and then relating it back to, let's think about what we can be doing around the new normal. What's it look like for us? This is a great opportunity for people to be examining the status quo of how they did it before, how they can do it in the future, and what the impacts, what are those metrics that they can really make a huge step forward in making things better. So in my mind, these are challenging times, and for a lot of people, stressful and difficult times, but also exciting times for change. And I think we're going to see a lot of it. And again, really interested to hear what you guys in your businesses are going to be doing about it. And if anyone wants to talk about it, that we're here to have any conversations you'd like also. This is a list of some resources that you can go to give you some ideas around setting up your offices, and particularly office layouts at home, if you're interested. And that really kind of takes us through the day. Actually, it took a couple more minutes than I was planning on, but just going to pause for a minute. If there's any questions, you don't have to come and say no questions, but I'll just pause in case somebody has any, or if Liz has picked up any chat messages, and then we'll sort of take it on and start to run through closure. Okay, Liz, gonna hand it back to you here.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you for walking through office layout. Like you said, this is something that we're all dealing with right now, and I know even just for myself, I started by working at the kitchen table, and with my husband now working from home, I was right in the line of traffic, so ended up having to do a lot of the things that you had mentioned and take a look at the space, find a new space. Did a little mini 5S to make sure my new space was nice and clean and organized, and everything was where it needed to be for me to work most effectively. So definitely appreciate that. As for the rest of you, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this topic, we are offering a special promotion on a few of our online courses, a 25% discount up until May 19th. For 5S or mapping the process or introduction to lean office and service. If you're interested in any of the other programs that we offer, like virtual training or project coaching or support, definitely feel free to reach out to us at any time. Or even if you just have a question, we're always happy to be here and to help out. So these are some of the topics that we've got planned for the rest of this year. So you should be getting a notification for next month, May, the topic that we will be discussing. But if you do have any suggestions for other topics that you would like to learn a little bit more about, or get some extra tips or ideas, please let us know that as well. We're always happy to get input from people that attend these webinars. And once again, my email is at the bottom, so feel free to send me a direct note, or you can always email us at info@EZSigmaGroup.com. So thank you once again for coming. We will remain on the line for a couple minutes just in case you do have any questions. But otherwise, please continue to stay safe and healthy. And we look forward to the day when we can all be back together again in person.